You know, it's a small world, and economic developers contribute to global growth. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Trevor Lewington, and on behalf of the EDA board, I'm pleased that you're able to join us for our virtual conference, Experience EDA 2020. In this session, we're going to talk a little bit about FCM's international programs, and I'm thrilled that we're doing this session. I've had the privilege personally of attending two missions, one in Belize and one in Jamaica, and both of those missions happened in February of the year, so that was even better to go somewhere warm when it was cold here. But seriously, a very eye-opening experience, very great opportunity to interact with some amazing people. So I'm excited that you're all here to listen to this topic today, and in particular that you'll hear from our panel with so much great experience with this program. But before we get there, I want to introduce past president of EDA, Chris King from the County of Grande Prairie. He's going to talk a little bit about Grande Prairie, but also talk a little bit about why they chose to sponsor this session. Grande Prairie has been a great partner of Economic Developers of Alberta, and so I'd like you to hear from our past president just a little bit about that. And so I'll pass it over to Chris.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Trevor. My name is Chris King. I'm the Economic Development Manager for the County of Grande Prairie, and the county is very happy to sponsor this session today as we are very aware of the role of economic developers in contributing to global growth. County Grande Prairie economy is very reliant on global trade as exports of natural gas, grains, pulses, cattle, and forestry products account for over 60% of our economy. I'm very eager to learn from our panelists today on their experiences dealing with economic change in Canada and around the world. Our panelists today are Kent McMullen. Kent has been in the field of economic development for almost 30 years. In this capacity, he has worked with many companies on business attraction, retention, and expansion. He's currently with the City of Edmonton as Senior Business Strategist in the Industrial Investment Division. Carolyn Siemens is the Advisor, Outreach, and Engagement for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. In this role, she is responsible for mobilizing Canadian technical expertise and strengthening engagement overall of municipal institutions, individual experts, and their communities in FCM's programming, both domestic and international. Tom Cope has 25 years of experience in economic development and management, and his specialties include business attraction strategies, business retention and expansion, business visitation programs, and he has an extensive network of contacts in industrial and commercial sector of real estate. I'll now turn things over to our panelists. I look forward to learning from them all. Thank you very much.
So while many parts of the developed world are now embracing an AI-enabled economy, there are still many countries that have not experienced economic prosperity. The impacts of war, corruption, and natural disasters have left many developing countries behind. Canada and the United States and other developed countries often offer aid to, and I quote, low and middle income countries in an effort to achieve a number of objectives. These objectives usually include lifting countries out of poverty, providing healthcare, establishing open and transparent governments with a free press, establishing police services to offer security, ingraining gender equity, and increasing a nation's economic prosperity. Most of these countries, I think all countries, all citizens want growth and have a desire for that growth, but on the ground, often that skill set on how to achieve it is missing. Since 2009, elected officials and economic development professionals from over 20 Alberta municipalities have been sharing the principles of economic development with our counterparts in Asia, Eastern Europe, and Latin America through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, or FCM's, international programs. This afternoon, we're going to have a conversation with Carolyn from FCM, Tom from Vegreville, and Kent from the City of Edmonton. So Kent, if I could, I'd like to start with a couple of questions for you. You've been involved in a project in the Ukraine. Could you talk to us a little bit about how long you've been involved? And I heard you were chosen as the leader for that project. So perhaps you could help us understand how you were chosen as the lead.
My role is to be a volunteer expert, to share our best practices that we have in North America and that we have learned locally and regionally. And we share those with the communities that we work with and help them to adapt them to the local norms. Our experiences don't have any capability of being a perfect match for someone in a developing country, but they can take the principles and adapt them to what works for them. I've been involved in FCM International for 9 years. I've been involved in 2 programs, program for local economic development and governance, and municipal-led economic development in Ukraine. And then for the last 4 years, I've been involved in a project in the Pearl River Delta of Vietnam, about 3 hours from Ho Chi Minh City. Very different communities than in Vietnam than the work I do in Ukraine. And how did I become the project lead? I kind of became the lead by default. I was working with Economic Development Edmonton when the first Ukraine project came along. The city didn't have the expertise in economic development, and so they brought me along. And then I left EEDC and joined the city, and I was able to take that file with me.
Thanks. Tom, 3 questions for you. Perhaps you could talk to us a little bit about why you wanted to be involved in a project in Belize, which is near and dear to my heart, having completed a mission in Belize myself. Or perhaps you can help us understand what your particular experience in economic development was there, and what did you expect you would be working on? What did you expect you would be doing?
I looked at it as a real opportunity to grow as an economic developer. For me, I had done all my work in Canada and particularly in Alberta, and it was really good to take a look at something where you're outside of your comfort zone. You can take a look at a totally different country with a totally different background, but use the skills and training that you've learned in Canada to try and bring there. It also, let's face it, it was in the middle of winter time, and it was an opportunity to go down to Belize in the middle of winter, which was a very, very nice country to be visiting in the winter time. But primarily it was to go down and allow my skills to be used to try and help people that could really use some help. It was amazing how well organized it was and how well planned it all was, because we had access to senior level people in both the federal level and the municipal level there. They don't have a state level there, just the 2 levels of government. And we were talking to high level people in all those instances, and had unlimited access to business people, banks, chambers of commerce, tourism boards, whoever we needed to talk to, we had that. So it was fantastic in that it allowed us to talk to all aspects of the country and take a good look at the economic situation there so that we could make the best recommendations we possibly could.
That sounds like a pretty amazing experience. And so what did you expect you were actually going to be doing, or what did you expect you do?
I mean, no matter how well you prepare for anything, there's no way you can know what to expect until you get there. I went in there without a lot of experience on this side of the economic development side of thing. I'd done a fair bit of traveling before, but never as an expert in my field. So I went down there with a fairly open mind. I'd done obviously the research that you would expect that anybody should do for this, and learned as much as I could about the people and whatever. But I can tell you right now, you don't get to know anything about a country by looking on Wikipedia and looking it up online. You really don't get a feel for it until you get there. So what I expected is that I would have a great experience, and that hopefully they would be able to use some of my knowledge and skills down there. But I was really open-minded when I went down there, and I think that's probably the best way to approach it.
I might add that I was in Western Ukraine, in the city of Lviv, in a snowstorm, as I'm getting emails from Tom, who's in Belize, in that humidity and sunshine. I didn't think that was too fair.
They made me drink cool drinks, though. It's the only way you could stay cool.
Now, Kent, you've been involved in 2 different projects in 2 different countries. Could you talk about how your experience in Vietnam was perhaps different than your experience in the Ukraine?
The project in the Ukraine has an actual office and office staff of about 15 people, and they have on-the-ground subject matter experts. So when we visit Ukraine, we're coming in for a particular conference, or we're going to reinforce what's being taught by the subject matter experts that are in the Ukraine. With Vietnam, you are the expert. There is a partner association with FCM, and it's the equivalent of AUMA. And there are 2 or 3 people employed by the Association of Cities of Vietnam who work on the project. But really the workload shifted back, and that was a bit of a surprise to us in Edmonton, as we were used to the Ukraine model, but we were able to adapt to the Vietnam model and provide the work there. They hire more consultants to do some of the work, and we facilitate and work with those consultants, Canadian consultants. The difference in Ukraine, there are 16 partner cities we work with. There are 15 Canadian cities and 16 Ukrainian cities. In Vietnam, there are 2 Canadian cities, Rossdale, BC, and Edmonton, and we work with 2 cities, Khao Lan and Can Tho, there. So different models. One of the big differences that we found is the cultural differences between the 2 countries. When Ken Mamzik and I went to do a training session on regional economic development, on cluster-based economic development, we had a room that was full of municipal employees, a few industry representatives, but we had members from the Central Party, the Communist Party. And now Ken and I tried to engage them. We tried to get them involved in the conversation and the dialogue. But what we found out is that no one will speak out publicly in fear of disagreeing with the representative of the Central Party. So you have the layer of the Central Party as well as the layer of the elected officials. Who supersedes who? Ken and I had to quickly learn on the fly how to handle this situation. We didn't want to get into a situation where we've come all this way and we don't want the training to be a failure. So we had to quickly adapt, and we turned to tabletop, roundtable discussions, and where people wouldn't fear crossing what the Central Party or what the senior elected officials would say. And it got to the point where we were trying to figure out how we were going to mobilize them to develop concepts and priorities for a strategy. So we introduced to them the concept of the sticky dot, where all the strategic initiatives are up on the whiteboard and everyone gets their 3 dots. In this case, it was 3 pieces of 3M notepads, and everyone got to put their dots by their priority. So it was anonymous. They loved it. The head of one of the business associations, who was this dynamic 4-foot-something businesswoman, said, "This is a new process to us. We have never seen this before. We will use this often," because that way they can share their thoughts and professional opinions without fear of repercussion. And then as a group, you look at the results, and it was much easier. So we learned each country, and it'll be the same with Tom, each country has different circumstances. You have to be able to adapt quickly to the unique cultural circumstances. And as a facilitator, you got to be able to adapt on the fly.
Carolyn, how does FCM go about recruiting volunteers? And I guess, what are the kinds of things that you're looking for from Canadians who want to participate in an international program with FCM?
So my role at FCM is as the advisor for engagement and outreach. And when it comes to recruitment, how the project gets started, we start with overseas partners. We talk about what they want to work on. Then we look at Global Affairs Canada and we consider their priorities for international development assistance. The project gets put together and then we formally advertise within FCM's membership, but we also coordinate with other economic development associations here in Canada or other Canadian networks who might have the kind of expertise that we're looking for. Sometimes we're looking for an individual, sometimes we're looking for a municipality as an institution. And it's always strengthened by council and community support. We're looking for expertise, support, availability of staff or elected officials, someone who can pull a team together, and of course, flexibility or international skills like languages or experience working internationally. The role of the volunteer is as a capacity builder. So from an FCM point of view, we hold the space for the project, and the exchange happens between staff and elected officials here in Canada and overseas, and often community members get involved in that as well. So as a volunteer, you might be giving a presentation at a workshop, or you might help design a strategic plan, maybe with 1 million stickies on a whiteboard behind you, even coaching a small fishing business on how to build a partnership with a local restaurant. Local coordinators here in Canada engage other staff or elected officials or community members to be in the project. You'll also do some reports to council, reach into the community if there's expertise that you're looking for. And of course, writing reports, submitting expense claims. There's a lot of admin that goes along with all the fun.
Okay, that's great. Tom, what was the cost to your municipality?
Well, that's the great thing about this, is it doesn't actually cost the municipality anything as far as money is concerned. It's simply a matter of allowing your staff to do it. So there's some staff time as far as the travel there and back and the time that they spend down on the mission, but it's also, you know, there's some prep time, obviously. Anybody that's going into these situations should probably do some research on whatever area they're going to, but that's all the costs that are involved.
And how about your travel logistics?
Everything's handled. Everything's handled by FCM. It's fantastic. They handle all the visas, they handle insurance, they handle hotels, on-ground transportation, airfare. They set you up with guides and interpreters if needed. I was in an English-speaking country, so that certainly helped. But my guide was not only fantastic for running us around all day, but he also, I was by myself down there, so he took me out a few times for a bite to eat or maybe a local beverage or two. But they were fantastic. The whole thing was handled by FCM.
Tom, was your council supportive of your involvement?
They were a little iffy. So what happened is my CAO was very, knew about the program, was very, very supportive of the program. And when he brought it up to council, they said, I was lucky. One of my council members actually had property down in Belize, so she wanted to be the council representative, which was understandable. So she was pushing for it fairly hard, and my CAO was pushing for it fairly hard. So they managed to get agreement to go, but the agreement was it wasn't going to cost the county any money. So unfortunately, that equated to I ended up spending 3 weeks of my holidays to go down and work for 3 weeks, which I didn't mind doing, but it turns out that I was the only one. We met with a number of other municipalities that were doing this, and we were the only municipality where I had to use my holidays to go down and work. But they were supportive in that regard as far as allowing me the time to go down and do that, yes.
And Kent, what about Edmonton's council? Similar question there. What kind of support did you see?
We have a great champion in Councillor Bev Essinger, and so she worked with the rest of City Council. All of our work on all three projects have been council-supported initiatives. The leadership team at the city, executive leadership team, have been supportive. And it's just not me. We bring the entire resources of the city. So we've had people go over and talk on gender equity. We've had people who've gone over on waste management. We've had people involved in one-stop shop. So we're able to bring all of the resources of the city to support these programs.
Now, Kent, how much did you know about your role before you went, and what kind of personal preparation did you undertake? I mean, I know when I went to both countries, I tried to do as much research as I could, but what did you do to prepare, and how much did you know really about what you were getting yourself into?
Council is notified that there's an opportunity to participate in these programs, and then you fill out an application and your city is selected. And then all of a sudden you get word that you're going to be a subject matter expert and leave in 4 weeks. But FCM, again, it's turnkey like the travel that Tom talked about. They send you a terms of reference, a contract, which lists everything you're going to do, how many presentations you're going to give. I've given up to 15 presentations in a day, ranging from 5 minutes to 25 minutes. They tell you in advance, you prepare them, you send them over, they critique them, they translate them. So before you get on the plane, you're fully briefed and know everything that you're going to be doing. And then when you arrive, they meet you at the hotel the first morning, they take you to the office or do it in the hotel, and they give you a full rundown. Normally the first day you get a jet lag day, so they take that opportunity to brief you, go over the presentation, and points that they want you to emphasize. It's a seamless process, so you don't really have to panic about what am I going to do when I get there.
You need a jet lag day because you flew east
Yes.
in the middle of winter, whereas I flew south to almost the same time zone. And other than a temperature, I had to adjust to a fairly significant temperature change, but I didn't have the jet lag issues that you did.
I have jet lag from Vietnam or Ukraine.
Now, Tom, can you tell us a little bit about your technical exchange in Belize, and what did you actually see when you were on the ground? I guess I'm curious to know, what you saw, and then what was expected of you when you returned. So when the mission was over, what was the deliverables for you after the process?
Well, on the technical side of things, it was like, as I mentioned before, is they took care of everything. But when we got there, it was like going back in time. It was lack of cell phone reception. It was lack of Wi-Fi. We managed to get some Wi-Fi. We stayed in the hotels that they booked for us were always nice hotels, and we were, I was able to get internet connection in the hotel. But just from my standpoint, from the standpoint down there, it was so hard for them to have access to that type of technology and that type of support. So you're working and chatting with the chamber, and you're talking to the tourism board, and you're talking to the market association and what have you. And that was an ongoing problem down there, is they just didn't have the technology to support what they were doing. So you can come up with a great marketing plan, but if you don't have anything that even things like photocopiers and things like that were just not prevalent down there. It was difficult for anything as on that side of things. It was just difficult. As Kent said, almost all day, every day, meeting with people. I had access, like I said, to senior ministers in the federal government. We went to the 3 largest cities in Belize and met with their mayor and council and met with their chambers of commerce, and every one of them had the equivalent of a farmer's market, an outside market that we met with, and tourism boards. So we had almost nonstop meetings, and we're working with them on a nonstop basis. So you're just learning as much as you possibly can, trying to give them as much of your experience and knowledge as you possibly can as well. When I went to San Ignacio, for example, it's a smaller city, maybe 20,000 people near the Guatemala border. I met with the guy that was running the market there, and we talked for about 2 hours, and then he said, "Hey, if you don't mind, can we meet some more?" And I said, "Well, I'm in San Ignacio, staying at the hotel tonight. I've got nothing else on my agenda." So he came over to the hotel. We had a bite to eat, and we sat there. There may have been a beverage involved, but I can't remember that exactly. But we sat there and talked until almost midnight. He said, "Hey, I got to get up at 6 in the morning." I literally almost had to kick him out the door because he was just like a sponge. You just sitting there and listening, exchanging ideas and exchanging information. And hopefully that he got some real value out of that. And he was just excited as all get out when he left. He was just, "Wow, thank you so much, thank you so much." So that for me was a great experience, and it just really shows that the people that really want to improve are the ones that will do what they have to do that. I mean, we must have sat there for 6 hours talking.
Now, Kent, what did your typical day look like while you were in the Ukraine, and what were the sort of key interest areas for our Ukrainian friends? What were the parts of economic development that most caught their attention? And I guess while we're at it, what did that look like in Vietnam? Were there differences in sort of areas of economic development between the two countries?
There is no such thing as a typical day. It depends on the program. I have flown in at midnight and then gotten into a city at midnight in Ukraine, and then the next day we drive and meet with 3 different cities and 3 different mayors. We'd meet with their economic development departments. Another time you're speaking at a conference of 150 economic development professionals, or you're in a room with 20 elected officials. So it varies greatly in both the Ukraine and the Vietnam models. Your evenings are generally free. You have the opportunity to go out and do a little sightseeing. There's a great fitness center by the hotel I stay at in Kyiv. You can go and work out. You can pay $20 for an excellent massage that lasts an hour. That's one of the perks of going to the Ukraine. It's just a great opportunity. And what type of concepts are they interested in? Everything. Economic Development 101, the pillars, business retention, expansion, formation, startup, women entrepreneurship, gender equity, tourism and ecotourism, cluster development, collaboration. What's the role of media and what is their role? Well, they're a watchdog. They're not the bulldog. I mean, it's a great opportunity to share everything we've got here. And they are, as Tom said, they're sponges for learning what we have. And so we just share whatever they're interested in is what we teach and what we present on.
Now, Kent, your project obviously has probably undergone some change since the global pandemic began. Can you talk to us a little bit about how your project might have shifted or had to be adjusted since the pandemic started?
Obviously, there's no travel. For about 4 or 5 months, there was just emails going back and forth. But then the Ukrainian project came up with an idea of office hours. So through September and October, about every other Tuesday morning from 7 to 9 Edmonton time, I go online on Zoom and they give me a topic: women entrepreneurs, business support services, business associations, whatever is the topic of interest. And I prepare a 20-minute presentation, and then they grill me and ask me questions for an hour and 40 minutes. They're very successful sessions. They usually have 15 to 20 people involved. And it's just a great opportunity to say, these projects have to keep moving forward. We have work that has to be done. Last week, we just had a 3-hour Skype meeting with Vietnam, where we were talking about their mango strategy and how they're going to export organic cubed mangoes. And so it was they were meeting with Canadian export officials or specialists to teach them how to do that. The work has to go on. Just because COVID is here, it doesn't mean we stop.
Now, Carolyn, could you talk a little bit about how you work with elected participants? Because that's a little bit of a different situation than economic developers. And so how do you work with elected officials and councils?
Elected officials here in Canada are really important when it comes to playing a role in the projects. There are relationship builders. So just like here in Canada, they open doors, they deliver messages, they create ownership and buy-in. And even sometimes when a project is stalled, they can help to kickstart it. They definitely help us celebrate, and they also share their expertise. So whether it's around women in leadership, maybe engagement in the community, or even inclusivity, this is the role of an elected official in contributing to the project, and it directly relates to what they do in Canada, can help push the project forward.
Now, Kent, I do have a couple of questions for you that I think are connected. So let me ask you, it's my understanding you might have had some visitors. So could you talk a little bit about when your Vietnamese partners came to visit, how many of them came to Edmonton, how Edmonton was to organize that event, and what your role in that visit looked like? I'd love to know, I think we'd all love to know who was involved from the municipality, and ultimately, what did your community think? We hosted a delegation from Jamaica, for example, throughout the Caribbean, came to Lethbridge, and we got to spend some great time with them. But what was that experience for your Vietnamese partners as they came to Edmonton? And talk to us a little bit about that experience.
Yes, we've had one delegation. They came in September of 2018. There was about 8 of them. Their biggest challenge is the coldest it ever gets in their community is 28 degrees Celsius, and they arrived on a night that it was 0. We had to talk to the hotel to override the heating system so their hotel rooms could be hotter than the 21 that hotel rooms are all stuck at. But they came, we organized a turnkey program for them. Council hosted them for dinner. Councillor Essinger met with them privately. We toured with industry. We met with the province of Alberta. So they were here for about 4 days, and we were able to meet with all of the key topics and have local City of Edmonton representatives or provincial representatives, industry, meet them and talk to them, including a local entrepreneur who imports products from Vietnam. And it was great because he told them, I won't buy from your country because you don't honor your contracts. And the government officials and the Central Party person all sat up and were all taking notes. And so it was a great opportunity to share information. And then the entrepreneur, the local entrepreneur, took them all out for a steak dinner. It was just a great opportunity. We had 45 minutes of free time, and they pleaded with me to go to Costco. So they went in and in 45 minutes put $2,500 on my credit card and came out with a lot of Apple devices and 240 bars of Irish Spring soap, which I'll tell you about another time.
But you got the points from it.
I phoned my wife and she goes, we get the points. And then I got in the bus and they gave me $2,500 in cash. So it was good. When the Ukrainians came in, we had a similar program. And then they actually had a down day. So we were able to take them out to Banff, or to Jasper, sorry. And they went for a swim in Pyramid Lake and just loved it.
Now, Tom, back to you for a moment. You were just involved in the inception mission to Belize. So could you talk a little bit about what you personally gained from that experience? What were your key takeaways? And other than maintaining council support, I think our audience would be very interested in knowing what key messages you would leave with them today about your participation in this program and perhaps the program in general.
It was, I hope it was a good learning experience for them, but it was a huge learning experience for me as well. As Kent mentioned, you really learn how to adapt your skill set to fit the situation. The thing that I was facing down in Belize is it's an underdeveloped country that has a lot of issues, everything from poverty to education levels to healthcare levels to training levels. But the underlying things was levels of corruption and issues with whether things were going to get done if contracted something. For example, they were working on the street in front of City Hall when I was there, and they had apparently already been at about a year and 6 months to put in a block worth of street, and it was just issues after issues after issues after issues. So for me, what I learned is that you can go there don't go there with preconceived ideas, because if you go there with preconceived ideas, you probably won't be of any use. You got to go there and listen for the first long period of time before you even start suggesting anything. The second thing that I really took out of that is that everybody's got a different scenario and a different situation that they're dealing with. In Belize, for example, we may not think of a $1,000 loan as a large loan, but down there, businesses were literally getting started for a couple of $100s. And so something as simple as a micro loan program that up here would be almost ineffective at that level, down there, boy, you give somebody that's got a work ethic and that really wants to succeed and make themselves better in life, $300, $500, $1,000. What a huge impact that has on their ability to maybe start up a small business, or maybe just get some supplies that they can sell or whatever. But it's not that people were not willing to do the work. It was a combination of not having the resources to get going, and having that I guess that little training level that made it more likely that they'd succeed. So for example, and I'm sure it was the same with you, Kent, is that they didn't have entrepreneurial training. So they didn't know how to do books, and they didn't know how to do inventory, and they didn't know how to do things that up here we've got access to, whatever. And you say, oh, well, they could have gone online. Well, they don't have that many computers down there. They don't have a lot of, you literally went to places that had a computer with internet, and a lot of times there was lineups to use a computer down there because there just did not have that. The Wi-Fi connectivity was almost non-existent down there. And you take things for granted up in Canada that down there is a day-to-day challenge for them down there.
The corruption is a great topic, and I found it in the Ukraine as well. There was one community where the mayor was elected, and the first thing he did was close the liquor store in the lobby of City Hall, because you would, before you went to meet with your development officer, you would buy a bottle of vodka, and you would leave it with your development officer. We met with one community who were in favor of e-services and payment online, but City Council wouldn't let all services go online where people could pay online because they wanted to be able to have a kickback. And so,
I can one-up you.
okay.
If you can believe this in Belize, it's a two-party system. And like I said, they've only got a federal and a municipal level, but they're the same two parties. So if you're UDP, for example, at the federal level, you're also that at the municipal level. And when they run a full slate of candidates. So it's not one against the other in 9 different districts. For example, in Belize City, if it's 50% plus 1 vote, the entire party gets in as the municipal party. So that had happened about 6 months or so before we'd gotten there. And if you can believe this, what they did is all of the employees were, of course, party supporters because that's how it works down there. So when they changed governments, all of the employees were fired except for one, and they brought in all new employees. Now, that's probably a big enough challenge as it is, but what they also did is they destroyed every single record in the place. They had no accounting, no records of who paid property taxes, who paid fines, if you had a parking ticket, they didn't even have records of that. Because of the corruption, they wanted to destroy all records so they don't know who's taken what for what. Yeah. So if you can imagine an entire administration in a city of almost 100,000 people changes over, and you don't have a single employee there that knew what the guy the day before was doing, and you have absolutely no records of anything anywhere.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important. These programs are introducing democratic principles and democratic governances so that those municipalities can start fresh and have somewhere to build.
Now, Kent, as economic developers, we work in an outcome-based environment. So what were the outcomes of your project? Were there successes and failures? And talk to us a little bit about how you measure those things.
I don't know of any big project failures. I'm not on the ground that much. I know we had problems with logistical issues. Once we had a translator and interpreter who wasn't that great. She was volunteering her time, and the community or the people in the room started picking on her, and I didn't think that was fair. It was very uncomfortable. But for us, the program itself, there haven't been any failures. Maybe just not as what we succeeded. When we first originally thought we would have 4 cluster strategies out of Vietnam, but we realized let's have the one mango development strategy and then grow from there. So the success is that Vietnam has shipped a container load of mangoes to Edmonton. They're now looking at the best opportunity for them is in cubed frozen mango, organic cubed frozen mango. And so they're working on marketing plans right now. The biggest success for me is we worked with a small community in Western Ukraine called Lviv. And we met with them, and they wanted to become an IT capital. So they talked about with us their IT ecosystem, and it was not even 20 IT companies. The university didn't want to work with them. They didn't have any legal or accounting support. They didn't market or promote or export much. They didn't have any foreign investors except for one out of Vietnam. And so we drew out what a proper ecosystem should be for an IT cluster. Then the next year they came here and did a study tour, meeting with the Edmonton IT. And less than a year later, they came up with Startup Depot, Ukraine's first IT incubator. That IT or Startup Depot, that little incubator, is expanding its physical presence. It has outgrown its current building. That small little cluster now produces Lviv Arena, Eastern Europe's largest IT conference, where 2,500 people register to come to Lviv to learn about IT. And people come from all over Europe for that conference. They now have 26,000 IT workers in that community. So much so the city has given the IT cluster 2 pieces of land for housing developments. So Stefan, who was 21, 22 when we first met him, said, Kent, I'm now 27 years old and I'm a property developer building a high-rise for IT workers, and only IT workers are allowed to buy in that condo. And the city has just given them more land just outside for a townhouse development. So to me, that is success. One community who had a vision, who worked hard, who did research, adapted what we have here in Edmonton to make it their own, and huge success. And it wouldn't have happened without FCM.
So Carolyn, well, what's next? My understanding is that Vietnam has 1 year left and the Ukraine is done in the spring. So what are some of the upcoming programs that FCM is undertaking through the international programs?
So looking at further opportunities, Edmonton's involvement in Ukraine and in Vietnam is coming to a close. The Ukraine project is ending this year, and the Vietnam project is ending in December of next year. We do have further opportunities coming up in the future around new programming and new projects. I don't have the exact details because they're not all finalized yet, but there are new opportunities in economic development, possibly in Ivory Coast, in Bolivia, also looking at what municipal economic development might look like in Canada, particularly as a response to COVID-19 here. We've got continued programming with First Nations communities and municipalities here. And of course, there will definitely be new programming, probably beginning in a few months, around engaging women in politics as part of our Feminist International Assistance policy here in Canada.
Kent, I think I'll hand it back to you for any last words.
Don't take yourself seriously. Every day is a unique opportunity. With the Ukrainians and with the Vietnamese, nothing really starts on time. So if you're an A-type personality like me, you kind of just have to chill for a bit and recognize that 10 o'clock meeting might start at 10:30. Every trip goes a little bit off. Your 30-minute presentation that you've worked hard to could end up being 5 minutes. Culture shock. You've got to remember, just because it's different doesn't mean it's bad. I've been involved in international trade for 39 years. And yes, Vietnamese kids and Chinese adults run up to me and rub my belly and whisper, Buddha. Buddha! Thank you, thank you. Or they love to practice, hello, hello, hello. And the Vietnamese will just stare at you because you're so different. In Ukraine, they stare at you because you smile and you have Western clothes. In Vietnam, they'll stare at you, well, just because you're a tall white guy. I've eaten everything from dogs to frogs. The last trip to Vietnam almost got me over the edge of cultural shock. We were at a restaurant and our host offered us deep-fried or stir-fried field rat in coriander sauce. Now, that was about my limit on that particular day. I said, you came here and we offer, I didn't say this to you, but I thought, we offer you filet mignon and show you 5 Vietnamese restaurants, and you're offering me field rat. So it's...
But in coriander, so
in coriander
that makes
sauce.
it okay.
That's right. And then the last little story, how after a while, everything is just the way it is. We had 5 days of meetings in Vietnam. Our host ordered breakfast, lunch, and supper for us. It was a little challenging after 5 days of fish head soup, which is fine, but we just wanted a variation. So we had a free night and we asked if there was an Italian restaurant. And they hummed and hawed and said, okay, walk 1 kilometer to the park and then turn left. And so Ken and I walked and we didn't see a restaurant, we saw a pizza cart on the side of the road. And we had a laugh and we went over and we had to eat there because the young entrepreneur had a laminated menu in perfect English. There wasn't a mistake on that menu, so we had to go in. So he was on the curb. We ordered, they sat us in the forecourt of a business, so an outside courtyard of a business. And as we were waiting for the pizza to come, Ken and I were chatting and I look up and I noticed what the store sold. They were a 1-product store, and they sold nothing but feminine hygiene. So we called that our pizza and tampon night. And it was so not out of the ordinary, we didn't even take a picture. Participating in FCM International is one of the best professional and personal development opportunities you can have. You learn so much through the cultural exchange, you learn so much and you gain so much from sharing your knowledge, and you see true appreciation as you're trying to help people step up a level, not necessarily out of poverty, but step up a level so they can have some economic prosperity in their lives and their communities. So I encourage you all to check out these opportunities. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much to our panel today. Kent, Carolyn, Tom, really appreciate all your presentations. Truly fascinating to hear all of your personal experiences with FCM and this program. Thanks also to the County of Grande Prairie for your sponsorship. We could not do this conference without all of our sponsors, so we appreciate the County of Grande Prairie and everyone else that's contributed to our conference this year. And now I'd like to invite you to join our Zoom live Q&A. So we'll jump over on Zoom. There'll be a link that appears on your screen here very shortly. Simply follow the link and our panelists will be waiting for you on Zoom to answer your questions. And I hope you dig in. I hope you find out more about what it is to participate in an FCM program on an international basis. I would swear by it. I've, like I said, had 2 great opportunities and certainly recommend it to anybody. So with that, I'll thank you for being here with us today. I'll thank our panel and we'll see you in the live Q&A momentarily.